This just in, classified war documents detailing secret American and NATO plans for building up the Ukrainian military ahead of a planned offensive against Russian troops were posted this week on social media channels. This is according to senior Biden administration officials via the New York Times. The Pentagon is investigating who may have been behind the leak of the documents, which appeared on Twitter and on Telegram.
The Times reports that military analysts said the documents appear to have been modified in certain parts from their original format, overstating American estimates of Ukrainian war dead and underestimating estimates of Russian troops killed. George Beebe, the director of Grand Strategy at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, joins us now to discuss. Welcome, George. George,
thank you.
You're a former director of the CIA's Russian analysis. So what do you make of all of this? What's new in these documents? And what do you make of the discrepancy between the documents and then military analysts who say that the numbers of dead on each side were changed?
Well, we can't take for granted that these are authentic, first of all. There's a possibility that these are forgeries, things that were concocted essentially as psychological operations to influence the thinking of one side or another. It's possible that that concoction came from the American side, possible it came from the Russian side. That said, it appears, if we can believe press reporting, that the U.S. government is treating this as if these were leaks. Leaks that were altered, as you pointed out, but which contain some genuine information. And the fact that much of the information in this document is not very flattering to the Ukrainian side suggests that this is something that is quite probably authentic.
You said, if we can trust reporting, there have been accusations that the New York Times, legacy media in particular, has been too credulous in accepting State Department talking points, printing stories about the theories of who perpetrated the Nord Stream sabotage that are convenient to the interests of the U.S. and its allies. Can you talk through a little bit why people might be skeptical of this story, who it seems to be helping?
Well, the picture that it presents overall is one of a Ukrainian counteroffensive force that doesn't look particularly overwhelming. Not particularly well trained, training levels described in this document, which is about a month out of date, by the way. This was beginning of March when this document supposedly was created. But the training levels that are described in this document don't look particularly impressive. The amount of equipment that the Ukrainians are scraping together, again, does not look particularly impressive. And the amount of artillery that they are firing and bringing to bear, again, quite underwhelming. So one potential hypothesis here is that this was designed to get the Russians to let their guard down, to think that the Ukrainians are not going to be coming at them with big numbers and overwhelming force. And that's possible, but I think if you were really trying to throw the Russians off, you would want to include some things that would include where and when the Ukrainians might be attacking. That would be the ultimate aim of this kind of deception. So my guess is that that's not actually what's going on here. My guess is that at least parts of this were actually genuine.
To the extent that they are genuine, and if they are, as you mentioned, this is basically a snapshot in time, right? This is March 1. To what extent do you think that any of these things that you're mentioning about preparation levels, even the numbers that we're not sure, who's lying about which side, dead on each side, to what extent, basically, what has changed between March 1 and now, if anything significant in your estimation?
Well, I think the training has certainly improved over the course of the past month. That's something that time helps. You're going to be able to run more troops through your training programs during that period. And certainly more deliveries are going to be occurring to the Ukrainians over time. So those numbers are going to look slightly better. But the gap between what they looked like a month ago and what the Ukrainians would really need to have high confidence of success in a counteroffensive is quite large. Generally, the rule of thumb when you're on offense is you need overwhelming numerical advantages over the side that's playing defense. And this document indicates that the Ukrainians are nowhere close to that. That doesn't mean that they may not, with intelligence and some deception, be able to surprise the Russians in some areas and bring a concentration of force that gives them an advantage. But I think it does mean that the odds of Ukrainian success in a counteroffensive are not such that we can be highly confident that they're going to achieve a breakthrough.
Do you think the strategic disadvantage that Ukraine is at, based on these documents, will be used to lobby for more U.S. funding to Ukraine?
Well, they've already been doing that. They've been lobbying for U.S. funding now for many, many months. The problem, I think, is not so much a willingness, but a capacity. What the Ukrainians need is a lot more ammunition and a lot more training and a lot more manpower. Those are things that you can't remedy very quickly. NATO can't provide manpower in significant numbers to Ukraine, particularly because the United States has said we're not going to put boots on the ground. We're not going to risk what Biden calls World War III in all of this. You can only train so many people in a given period of time. And the ammunition stockpiles that the American side has been providing to the Ukrainians are dwindling. And we don't have the defense industrial capacity to ramp up that production very fast. So there are real constraints on what we can do.
So do you think that this indicates that this war is likely to continue for many months or even years after this? In other words, we had this Russian offensive that has also stalled out, right? Is this going to become a war of attrition dependent on how much, for example, ammunition and other supplies the United States and European countries are willing to send to the Ukrainian side, and then the Russians essentially running out of their own critical material and men on their side? Is this going to turn into a very long war of attrition?
Well, I think it already is a war of attrition. And unfortunately, I think that's a war that favors the Russians over time. They have a much larger population. They have a much bigger defense industrial base. The question is, can Putin sustain this politically over time? And right now, it looks like he can. Now, can't be confident that he can sustain that for years on end, but it doesn't look like the Russians are yet at a point where they feel compelled to say uncle in all of this and sue for peace. So my guess is we're going to be in a war of attrition for quite some time until both sides realize they need to compromise.
George Eby, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
We'll have more Rising right after this.